Hello again, everybody. Leif Skodnick back with you for another edition of Baseball Without Borders, a podcast from the World Baseball Network. As always, you can check out our journalism at www.worldbaseball.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram, as well as Facebook. I'm joined by my colleague, Matthew Tallarini. And Matt, a little bit of breaking news. Brad Bohannon, the head coach at the University of Alabama, was fired less than an hour ago by the athletic administration at the University of Alabama. And this comes on the heels of New Jersey and Ohio suspending wagering on the Alabama LSU series this past weekend. And it's definitely an interesting move. And I don't quite yet know all the details, but I just wanted to acknowledge that happened, and we'll see what happens going forward. It's certainly going to be an interesting story, and I'll have something up about it on worldbaseball.com a little bit later today. But we wanted to talk about a number of topics, and the first of which, last night in Major League Baseball, full slate of games. Matt, what did you pick up last night?
Yeah, there was a good amount of display and throughout the league. I mean, certain pitching matchups looked really interesting, and I also saw the comeback from the Yankees. That was neat. Jose Trevino with a walk-off single to cap off another 4-3 win for the Bronx Bombers. So very, very great pitching across the board too. Nationals Cubs ended in a 2-1 slate. Carl Edwards got the win out of the bullpen for the Washington Nationals. There's been a lot of, interesting alignments too throughout Major League Baseball last night. Cole Irvin, starting pitcher for the Washington Nationals, he went 4 1/3, allowed 2 hits, 1 earned run, 3 strikeouts, 4 walks, doably, and his bullpen kept him in, lights out down the line of the game. So, I mean, what more can you ask? And, what the Nationals are looking towards right now. Yes, they're 5th in the NL East, but being 12-18, we've seen this before with Washington. I think that, you can't count them out, especially what happened in 2019 and how Martinez was at the helm then for the Washington Nationals. And, yeah, they played, good baseball last night against a pesky Chicago Cubs team.
Elsewhere in baseball around the world, Trevor Bauer made his first start in NPB with Yokohama after, he had pitched a couple of minor league games in Japan. He hadn't pitched in the major leagues since 2021. He was suspended for violations of MLB's domestic violence policy. He was never charged or convicted with a crime, but the Dodgers released him this past spring. He's owed $22.5 million for this season by the Dodgers, but no team wanted to pick him up. So over to Japan he goes. Matt, tell us a little bit about his start with the Bay Stars over there.
Yeah, so he went 7 innings, allowed 7 hits, 1 earned run, walked 1 batter, and struck out 9. Trevor Bauer, pretty much, he's been giving a little bit of a, not like a high profile. I feel like how he's been doing a lot of like these interviews in Japan, but I think that he's trying to carry a new trend of why major league pitchers would like to take this route down the line. I think that's kind of like how he's seeing this as, like a 1 year, do I like playing in Japan type of mindset. I mean, how he pitched against the Hiroshima Carp yesterday, 2 days ago. I mean, that was huge. First game of the series to go out like that. And so I mean, what the Bay Stars have to do, I mean, they really got to get their offense going. I think, what Shohei Managa did in the World Baseball Classic of how he pitched, really, really constructively well for the Japan national team. That I think, the Bay Stars really have a good starting pitcher in Trevor Bauer. I think that's going to be, key down the line if they really can make a run to the playoffs. But so the Bay Stars beat the Hiroshima Carp 2 nights ago, 4-1. Currently in the NPB standings, I'll get that up in 2 seconds. The Yokohama Bay Stars are um, 18-8 to start the year. So keep in mind, adding Trevor Bauer, this is big. I mean, this is a big piece, that the Yokohama Bay Stars have not won the Japan series since the Bobby Rose days in 1998. So I think, adding a key guy like Trevor Bauer, you have Neftali Soto still, Tyler Austin, who's been a trail end professional player even throughout his major league career, taking his talents to Japan and also playing for Team USA in the Olympics a few years ago. That's a big, type of lineup to even carry if you have those type of foreign players on your team, I'll say. So I think, you're in first place. You're ahead a few games from the 15-11 Hanshin Tigers. So I think that Yokohama can make an interesting stretch if they really want to see the Japan series this year in the 2003 season.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the Bay Stars do with the addition of Bauer. Talking about other players going overseas, Didi Gregorius, former Yankee shortstop, former Cincinnati Red, former Philadelphia Philly, former Arizona Diamondback, signed with Algodoneros de Union Laguna, who play in Torreon, Mexico, in the Liga Mexicana de Baseball. I'm kind of surprised to see Didi Gregorius going overseas. He didn't have a great last couple seasons. He batted 209 in 21 and 210 in 22. But, he's a good fielder. I feel like, he's still a serviceable major leaguer. He had a very good season in the COVID-shortened 2020 year, playing in all 60 games, slashing 284, 339, 488 for Philadelphia. He's probably, he was not an everyday player last year. Maybe he can work himself back into form. He's only 33, so I think going to the Mexican League is going to at least keep him on the radar for major league clubs down the stretch. Maybe if he gets back into form and is playing well, he can find himself back in a spring training camp next season. What do you think?
I mean, yeah. I mean, last year, he did play in 63 games before he hit the shelf of the injured list. Last season, he did bat 210. I understand, average doesn't get as much concerning to me nowadays because with all the advanced metrics, but 45 hits, 16 doubles, hitting 1 home run, driving in 19 runs batted in, and walking 13 times. I think, Gregorius can work counts efficiently. And I feel like the pitching he'll see in Mexico will kind of help his mechanics more too. That, yeah, some guys will pitch like 93, 94, probably on average 3 to 4 guys in the Mexico League pitch 95 and blatantly 96. But, he's not going to really be seeing like high 90 pitching in Mexico, to be honest, as he would, obviously be playing in the major leagues, but and what he's been used to.
Yeah, he was released by Philadelphia back in August, and the only real game action he's seen since then was over the winter with Santurce in the Roberto Clemente League in Puerto Rico. Over the winter, he played 16 games, 10 hits in 66 plate appearances, with 4 walks, a double, and 1 RBI. So he was not particularly great down there. I would have thought he did better in the Puerto Rican Winter League, but of course, if he kind of took the time off between his release and going down there, then those numbers are kind of what you would expect, I guess. Certainly, I'm sure he was not pleased with how he did down there, but I think he'll make a decent salary in the Mexican League, and if he can play well, he can certainly get himself back to affiliated baseball, perhaps. Speaking of affiliated baseball, Cuban starting pitcher Roenis Elias, who has been around the major leagues for the past almost 9 years with Seattle, Boston, Seattle again, and Washington. Was in the Cubs organization until apparently yesterday. He left AAA. He was with the Iowa Cubs and has signed with SSG Landers in the KBO, Korean Baseball Organization League. Um, I think he's probably not a guy that's going to come back to the United States. He's going to make more money playing over there than he would in AAA, and I can't fault him for going. He was pitching well in Iowa. Well, at least he had won 2 games. He made 4 starts, 21 innings pitched, 5.48 ERA, not great. He'd only given up 16 hits, but 13 earned runs over that span for an ERA of 5.48. So, probably time for him to go elsewhere. Matt, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, during this part of your career as a pitcher, I feel like he's played, a good amount of years in the major leagues. And I think, yeah, like in Korea, he's not going to be really seeing like certain ends of how, the hitting really is in Japan. But I think, he'll pitch well in the KBO. I think, with the SSG Landers that, they want to win a championship this year. Like as bad and what they were capable of doing last year, being the Kiwoom Heroes in the Korean series. So it's big to add a guy like Elias in your rotation because with the likes of former St. Louis Cardinal pitcher Kim Kwang Hoon, Park Jong Hoon is having a good year too in the starting rotation for the SSG Landers and Kirk McCarthy as well. I think that's a big leverage to have that type of pitcher like Roenis Elias and replacing Enny Romero. I mean, like not having any in your rotation is big because he does have an effective slider. He does have like certain good breaking mechanics that he can get hitters really out consistently in the Korea League. But with him not being in the rotation, Elias has to fill that role, and it's big of what the SSG Landers are going to be capable of doing down the stretch of this year. And they're in second place now, just behind the Lotte Marines. And if their rotation can really bunker in a lot, with them being 6 games above 500 at 17-11, the LLG Twins, I think that they could take over first place with the Lotte Giants at 15-9 and probably make a run far into the Korean playoffs. So if the number 1 seed wins the Korean League for English fans that are getting into international baseball, they automatically go to the Korean Championship. And the 2nd through 5th seeds, the 5th and the 4th playing the wild card, that determines the next set of rounds for those teams to meet the number 1 team in the Korean Series playoffs in the final of the Korean Series. So, yeah, I think, the SSG Landers do have the pitching rotation in the KBO. And I think, yeah, just adding Elias is a big mix of what he can bring to the table and let alone how he built his mechanics in the Winter League from last year. Life 4-0 with a 0.92 earned run average with Aguilas Cibaeñas. I mean, that's in 30 from 39 innings. I mean, that's spectacular of what he displayed down in the Dominican Republic this year with 38 strikeouts, walking 10 batters, and just allowing 20 hits to win the Lanzador del Año award from last Winter League season. So he played a big part for that Aguilas Cibaeñas team to get to the final last year as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what he does over in Korea. I haven't watched any Korean games really ever, so I don't know exactly what the level of play is like over there. I know it's a little less than Japan and probably a little better than Double A. But the numbers he put up in the Ladome over the winter are just stellar. I mean, there's no getting around that. And
Yeah, yeah.
I think he'll be great over in Korea. It's too bad that it didn't work out for him with the Cubs because I think he's certainly capable of pitching in the major leagues. But baseball is baseball. You can only sign with one team, and it's tough to get out of a contract once you're in it, unless you do something extreme like go to Korea. Um, Finally, of note, before we talk about today's games around Major League Baseball, Gary Sanchez, who is with the San Francisco Giants, has been outright released by the Giants organization. He had been pitching, or pardon me, he had been playing in AAA Sacramento. 16 games, 55 at bats, just 9 hits, batting 164 with a 319 OBP, slugging 182, total OPS of 501. You know, I was covering the Yankees a little bit and watching them a lot when Sanchez was a rookie in 2016. And that year, I would have, if I had had a vote for AL Rookie of the Year, I would have given it to Sanchez. Substantially the same numbers Sanchez had that year as Willie McCovey had the year he won the National League Rookie of the Year, which was 1959 with the San Francisco Giants. I'll read the comparison for you. 2016, Gary Sanchez played in 53 games. His slash line was 299, 376, 657, and his OPS was 1.032. He had 20 homers and 42 RBIs, drew 24 walks. In 1959, Willie McCovey won the NL Rookie of the Year, a little better triple slash line, 354 batting average, 429 OBP, 656 slugging, 1.085 OPS. 52 games for McCovey, 68 hits, 13 home runs, 38 RBIs. So, yeah, okay, McCovey hit a little bit better for average, but substantially their numbers were the same. Sanchez, of course, that year did not win the Rookie of the Year. I felt like he should have. He finished second in the balloting. But then, after that, he never really regained that form. I mean, once around the league, and he was never quite the same player that he was as a rookie with the Yankees. He had a good season the next year, 278, 345, 583 with an 876 OPS, with 33 homers and 90 RBIs. And then it just kind of progressively went down from there. 2018, he didn't even hit 200. Yes, he had 18 homers, but 53 RBIs. He played 89 games, so he's kind of an every other day guy. And he just never really got back to that form that he had his rookie year. He was obviously traded to Minnesota and then signed with the Giants. And they had to cut him loose because he wasn't really going to be a force. He wasn't even a force at AAA. So, out the door he goes. And the Giants are not a great team. They're not a terrible team, but they just had no place for him. It's tough because the guy has so much talent, right? Like, great hitter. He's not the best defensive catcher out there, but if he could put up numbers like he did in his first 2 seasons, you'll take that. Unfortunately, he hasn't been able to do that since 2017.
Yeah, I mean, like with Gary Sanchez, the biggest, mechanic, sound deal he had to work on was blocking efficiently. And I feel like that's one angle of how you can be good as a major league catcher is if you block and you know how to hold certain guys on and display, pretty much now what we're seeing with the running game now in Major League Baseball, since there's more action, pitcher can only throw over twice now, that it's going to take a different angle for him to get used to that. I think if the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, yes, I'm going to say their whole abbreviation of their city, but I just think that if they want to see a key piece in that, at that position to get a guy like Gary Sanchez, I mean, I think it could work out for him, but, what else is there to, trace if you have, a certain offense with Ohtani, with Trout, and then how does that command to you, as a defense liability to have Sanchez? That's another angle of where, Phil Nevin needs to think about and the front office of the Los Angeles Angels. I mean, if they want to add him, is that a real difference, or does does it keep of certain other Angel seasons where you don't make a deep run with somebody like Sanchez. So like that's another thing. And I'm going to put off their depth chart in a second, but Matt Tice, he's hitting okay. I mean, 207, but like for what the job he does, he's a good defender. 4 RBIs. He's driven in 1 home run through 29 at bats. He's their backup catcher pretty much. Also, Chad Wallach, who's been catching a certain amount of innings too for the Angels. He's batting 269, 2 home runs, 4 runs batted in 26 at bats. I mean, OPS on base plus slugging percentage is at 796, which has to improve just a tad bit, I'll say. But like what's their reach? What's the reach if the Angels want to see that angle in getting Sanchez, even for defensive purposes? And does that help guys like Patrick Sandoval, Jose Suarez, and all those key guys, Red Detmers? I mean, that's another question that the Angels have to work out if they really want to have interest in Gary Sanchez.
So let's take a look around games on the major league level today. Travel day, so almost everything is in the afternoon. Chicago, Washington at 1:05, Mets, Detroit at 1:10, along with Pittsburgh, Tampa Bay. 1:15, we've got the Angels at the Cardinals. 2:10, Baltimore at KC, and Minnesota and the White Sox. 3:10, Milwaukee, Colorado. 3:37, Seattle's at Oakland. 4:10, Atlanta at Miami, and 6:10, Toronto at Boston. Matt, what are you watching today?
Today, probably going to see Verlander's first start of the season. I think that's going to be a marquee matchup for his sake. I mean, Edwin Rodriguez too. He's got a 2-2 record, 2.21 ERA for the Detroit Tigers. I think Eduardo Rodriguez. Sorry. I think that that's going to be a key, game for the Mets. They need to get hot right now. I think that's another end of what you need to do to really begin the month of May. If you can, win a series against, anybody in your division, the Tigers, let alone, I think that's a huge deal. Like getting swept yesterday in their doubleheader, and bouncing back today. I think, the Mets are due for one, honestly. And there's a few other games too I had in mind. Pablo Lopez of the Minnesota Twins. He's going up against Lucas Giolito of the Chicago White Sox. With life stated, that's a 2:10 p.m. Eastern start time. Lopez, I think he can work efficiently too. I think that, his slider, his split sinking fastball, I think he's got a little bit of certain components that, he can mark around this type of this time frame of the year. And Lucas Giolito, he's 1-2 with a 4.15 earned run average. I think he's bound to really go the distance, I think, against that Minnesota offense today. So I think that's going to be a key. Those are two of my key games today in Major League Baseball. And I mean, we couldn't leave out Max Muncy yesterday, helping the Dodgers win that amazing game, that amazing comeback with that grand slam in the bottom of the ninth. I thought, seeing that really might be a turning point for the Dodgers, to probably see, them being a 19-13 life. I think it's key now that they could get hot during this time frame of the season and possibly be, well several amount of games above 500 before the All-Star break. What are your takes on the Dodgers win yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you can come back with 4 runs in the bottom of the ninth and win the game, that's a boost to your team, right? I mean, the win last night puts them at 6 games over 500. The Phillies, obviously, the reigning NL champions. So this is a matchup we could see again in the postseason, and that gives a team a boost anytime you could do that, right? Like, this is a team we're going to see in the playoffs, possibly. And we were just able to make this great comeback with the grand slam by Muncy that scored Betts, Freeman, and Smith. So, I've got to think this gives the Dodgers a little bit of a boost. Now, they are 19-13 leading the NL West, so it's not like they were floundering. But, this could prime them to go on a big run as we head towards the All-Star break, and we'll just have to wait and see. The games I'm watching today, like you, I'm going to watch the Mets and the Tigers because I want to see Verlander pitch and see how he does. And the Mets have lost 4 games in 3 days, 2 doubleheaders. They've lost both ends of them. So certainly, not despair in Queens, but there is a little bit of here we go again from Met fans. Because when you've been through what Met fans have been through since roughly 2008, the 2 good seasons in the mid 2000 teens excluded, there's always a little bit of here we go again. So, definitely going to watch Verlander versus Rodriguez, Mets Tigers at about 40 minutes from now. And then 3:37 today, Rye, New York's own George Kirby. He's 2-2 pitching for the Mariners against the Athletics. Probably going to be about as many people at that game as would be at Disbro Park when Kirby was pitching for the Rye Garnets of Rye High School in NYS PHSAA action. I think there were about 2,000 people at the A's game yesterday, so I don't expect it to be much better today, especially given that it's an afternoon game. But that's what I'm going to be watching.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing some good pitching too. I think we can't leave out Wade Miley, though. I think, Coors Field, I mean, you saw a crazy offensive display last week in Mexico City. And I just think, Wade Miley, 1.86 of that earned run average, 3-1 record, and also playing in high altitude today. That could be very intriguing to see how he accustoms to that. I think that's going to be interesting, to play in the weather factor. And Wade Miley having a really good season for the Milwaukee Brewers. I think that, who knows how his performance is going to be today out in Colorado, so in Mile High. So I think, that's another, big turning point of, what the Brewers can do right now at 18-12, and to see, how Miley handles those circumstances against a little bit of a pesky Rockies offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the altitude is going to be less of a factor in Colorado than it was in Mexico City because, as was noted, the humidor wasn't calibrated properly for the baseballs in Mexico City, which probably led to a lot of what we saw there with regards to the ball just flying like crazy. But, they've kind of perfected that in Colorado now, and they know how long and what humidity to keep the balls at so they don't fly like golf balls or super balls out of the ballpark. So we'll see what happens there, but it should be interesting. And we'll be back with another edition of Baseball Without Borders on Monday, where we will go over everything that happened around professional baseball worldwide and maybe even college baseball. Hopefully we'll have more on the Alabama situation. And of course, you can always check out our written journalism at www.worldbaseball.com. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. My name's Leif Skodnick. He's Matt Tallerini. We'll be back next Monday. And until then, smoke 'em inside.